The fleet of alien ships hung in the darkness of space like a city of lights spread across an endless night. Each ship was massive and powerful, built with centuries of knowledge from civilizations older than Earth itself. The aliens had gathered for a single purpose: to test a new race that had just joined the stars. That race was humanity. They were small compared to the mighty empires, and most believed they were weak, curious creatures who had no place in the deep void. As a final act of mockery, the Council of the Fleet handed them the weakest ship in the Armada, a vessel so fragile that even cadets of other races would never be trusted with it. Its hull was thin, its weapons outdated, its engines old and slow. The humans accepted it without complaint. They did not argue, they did not beg for something better. Instead, their captain, a man with sharp eyes and a calm voice, gathered his crew and stepped into the vessel as if it was a gift. The aliens who watched laughed quietly. To them, it was entertainment, a cruel joke. They expected humans to burn within hours once the trials began. It was easy to underestimate a race that had crawled from a single blue planet only a few years ago. Inside the human ship, the atmosphere was tense but steady. The crew strapped into their stations, running, hands across controls that hummed with age. The walls trembled slightly, as if the ship itself feared what was coming. But the humans did not. They whispered to one another. They smiled with nervous faces, and then they fell silent as their captain spoke. His words were not dramatic, but they carried weight. He told them they had been given the weakest ship, but that weakness did not decide destiny. He said survival depended not on the vessel, but on the hearts and minds guiding it. Those words sank deep into every crew member. When the signal came, the fleet engines roared to life. Hundreds of ships began moving toward the trial zone, a dangerous region of unstable space near a collapsing star system. The void shook with energy storms that ripped apart unprepared vessels. Alien commanders whispered bets, waiting for the humans to fail first. The human ship drifted behind, slow and awkward like an old animal walking into a battlefield. Its engines sputtered, its shields flickered faintly. Even to the humans themselves, it looked like a coffin. Yet no one turned back. The trial began. At once, storms of plasma erupted across the dark. Lightning brighter than suns slashed across the void, splitting space with violent cracks. Alien ships moved in tight formations, shields overlapping, engines burning steady with centuries of perfected design. Their movements were cold and practiced, but the human ship moved differently. It did not follow the same path, nor did it cling to heavy shield formations. The captain ordered a strange maneuver, one that made alien observers frown. Instead of resisting the storm directly, the humans angled the ship to ride with the current of energy, letting the storm's flow push them forward. It looked reckless, foolish even, but within moments, their weak vessel slipped through the first wave without damage. Alien voices filled the channels. Some laughed, calling it luck. Others grew quiet, watching closer. No one had thought a weak human ship would last more than a few minutes. Yet here it was, cutting through danger not with power, but with strange instinct. The crew inside worked fast, reprogramming systems, rewriting navigation codes as the storm shifted. Their fingers danced across old keys, improvising where alien. Machines relied only on rigid commands. The captain remained calm, his voice guiding them like a steady rhythm, his orders clear and quick. The second wave struck harder. Plasma tore across the fleet, burning shields, cracking hulls. Several smaller alien ships spun out of formation, retreating before they were destroyed. The humans did not retreat. Their ship twisted like a leaf in a storm, sliding between lightning arcs, dodging debris that moved faster than bullets. A young engineer shouted numbers, rewriting shield patterns not meant for such power, bending old systems into something new. The crew obeyed, turning weakness into motion. Their outdated vessel began to move as if alive, responding to human hands in ways alien ships could never. On the viewing decks of the alien fleet, silence spread. Observers leaned closer, eyes fixed on the fragile craft weaving through storms that had crippled stronger ships. They whispered to each other, confusion rising. How was this possible? How could the weakest ship survive where others failed? Some called it chance, others called it madness. But none could deny what they saw. Inside the human vessel, sweat rolled. Down faces, hearts pounded, yet no one broke. Every mistake became a lesson, every weakness a chance to adapt. Fear was there, but it did not rule them. They were humans, and they had lived their entire history with weakness at their side. Compared to the storms of nature on their own world, compared to wars fought with nothing but will and desperation, this was just another challenge. As the storm calmed for a moment, the human ship emerged from the chaos. Its hull was scarred. Smoke trailed from vents, but it was still there, still flying. Across the fleet, alien voices fell into uneasy silence. The humans had survived the first trial, something almost no one believed they could do. Their captain looked at his crew, nodded once and gave no speech. They did not need words. They had proven something already, not only to the aliens, but to themselves. Far away, the Council of the Fleet sat in their grand chamber, watching through endless screens. Their faces were carved from stone, cold and proud. Yet even they could not hide a flicker of surprise. The humans had not been destroyed. The weakest ship had not broken. Instead, it had carved its way through the storm, guided by stubborn hearts and sharp minds. The trial was far from over. Greater dangers lay ahead, trials that would test not just skill but the very limits of survival. But already, the aliens, who mocked humanity, began to feel a shadow of doubt. If humans could survive this, what else could they endure? What else could they rewrite with their fragile hands and unyielding spirit? The human ship drifted forward, battered but alive. Its lights glowed faint against the darkness, a small flame refusing to die. And somewhere deep in the silence of the void, the universe itself seemed to pause, as if waiting to see how far these fragile creatures would go. The human ship floated, forward into the trial zone, its surface still scarred from the storm, its engines still trembling under strain. To the alien fleets, it looked like a dying relic, a machine that should not even be here. Yet inside the fragile hull, the crew moved with sharpened focus. They had passed the first wave, but now the real trial was waiting. The collapsing star. System was alive with dangers no training manuals could fully describe. Space itself was twisting, folding, and tearing under the weight of a dying sun. Even the strongest alien ships struggled to keep their formations steady. The human vessel, the weakest of them all, pressed on into this chaos. From the alien command stations came murmurs of disbelief. Some spoke of erasing the humans from the trial entirely, declaring that survival was only a matter of chance. Others argued that perhaps chance was not the right word, that perhaps the humans saw patterns no one else dared to see. But the council silenced all talk. The humans would face the same path as the others. No mercy, no changes. If they died, they died. If they lived, then fate itself would be questioned. The next challenge revealed itself as the ship approached. The fractured orbit of a shattered moon. Massive fragments of rock, each larger than mountains, circled the star in violent paths. Gravity twisted their movements, pulling and pushing them like weapons hurled through the void. The alien ships activated their massive shield generators, holding tight formations, engines roaring as they forced their way through the deadly belt. The human vessel had no such luxury. Its shields were weak, its engines barely strong enough to dodge debris. Inside the ship, alarms screamed as the first wave of asteroids approached. The navigator's voice cracked with urgency, calling out the speed and direction of every moving stone. The crew scrambled, recalculating the ship's path second by second. There was no margin for error. A single strike would split the vessel apart. The captain stood calm, his eyes locked on the map of orbit lines spreading across the screen. His voice cut through the noise, sharp and steady, as he ordered a maneuver that made no sense to alien observers. Instead of flying around the asteroids, the human ship dove into the densest path of fragments, straight toward danger. Alien commanders watching from the fleet shook their heads in disbelief. They whispered that this was suicide, that no vessel could survive such a storm of stone. But as the first fragment spun close, the human crew moved with impossible coordination. Thrusters flared in quick bursts, tilting the vessel through narrow gaps that seemed too small to pass. The ship scraped by, fragments spinning close enough to leave sparks across the hull. Each near miss looked like the end, yet somehow it was not. The humans were not fleeing from the storm of rocks, they were dancing through it. The key was not power, but timing. The humans did not rely on force shields to block the asteroids. Instead, they rewrote the ship's navigation systems, creating algorithms that predicted the chaotic dance of fragments before they collided. The crew adjusted the ship's movements with each heartbeat, shifting by meters, then by centimeters, slipping through patterns that looked impossible. To alien eyes, it was madness, like watching insects fly through a storm without being crushed. To the humans, it was survival, nothing more. Hours passed like this. The asteroid belt stretched endlessly, each passage deadlier than the last. Stronger alien ships, even with their mighty shields, began to fall behind. One by one, some were forced to retreat, their commanders unwilling to risk destruction. Others pressed forward but lost vessels when shields failed and rocks tore into their hulls. Every failure only made the watching fleets more certain that the humans could not last. And yet, the weakest ship remained. Its hull was battered, pieces of armor torn away, engines smoking, but it was still there. Inside, exhaustion burned in every face. The crew's hands shook from constant control, their throats dry from hours of tension. But still they worked, driven by the same voice that carried them through the storm before. The captain reminded them that survival was not about perfection, but about persistence. He told them every second alive was another second won, and every moment of breath was proof that they had not yet fallen. The words fueled them, turning weakness into fuel. Then the asteroid field shifted, a gravitational wave from the collapsing star dragged the fragments into a spiral, pulling them together into a storm faster and more violent than anything before. The alien fleets braced, shields straining as their ships groaned under the weight. But the humans had no shields strong enough to endure. They had only one chance. The engineer proposed something desperate. He spoke of redirecting the ship's engines. Not to fight the gravity, but to join it. He said they could ride the spiral like a river, letting it pull them while they guided the ship through its heart. It was insane, but it was their only hope. The captain gave the order. The ship tilted sharply, thrusters burning bright, and then the gravity caught them. At once, the vessel was flung forward, spinning into the heart of the spiral. Asteroids crashed and split around them, fragments raining like knives. But the human crew worked as one, hands flying across controls, adjusting, correcting, rewriting. The ship skimmed past destruction by hair's breadth, alive only by the stubborn will of those inside. On the alien command decks, silence spread once again. Commanders leaned forward, unable to look away. They had expected human screams, human failure, human destruction. Instead, they saw the weakest ship surfing chaos like no vessel ever had. It was not luck. It was not chance. It was something else entirely. Finally, the spiral broke apart. The ship burst free, spinning wildly, smoke trailing, alarms blaring. The crew fought to stabilize, pulling the vessel back under control until it floated steady once more. Their bodies were weak, their voices hoarse, but they were alive. Against everything, They were alive. The alien fleets could not explain it. Stronger ships had fallen. Better technology had failed. Yet the humans, with their fragile craft, had survived. Whispers spread faster than the storm itself. Some called it defiance, others called it genius, and some whispered the word destiny. Whatever it was no longer possible to laugh at them. The captain looked at his crew, eyes tired but burning with quiet pride. They had faced the trial of stone and lived. The weakest ship pressed forward again, deeper into the collapse, carrying with it the weight of all eyes across the stars. And though none of the humans said it aloud, each of them felt the same truth. They were no longer here to prove themselves to aliens. They were here to prove something far greater. They were here to prove what it meant to be human. The human ship moved deeper into the collapsing system, carrying scars like a warrior who had survived too many battles. Its hull was cracked, its shields weakened, its engines running far past their limit. Yet every heartbeat of the crew kept it alive, every decision pushing it farther than it was ever built to go. Across the alien fleets, silence grew heavier. They had all seen the impossible. This fragile ship had survived storms and stone fields that even mighty ships could not endure. Some commanders called it defiance, others whispered of madness, but none could look away. The next trial was different. It was not storm or stone, but something older, something that had swallowed ships for centuries. At the edge of the trial zone, a black hole spun in the darkness, its pull stretching space itself. Time bent near it. Light vanished into its endless mouth. Even the strongest alien vessels avoided passing too close, for one mistake meant being torn apart, atom by atom. Yet the path of the trial led straight toward its gravity, daring every ship to cross. Strong fleets lined their vessels in perfect patterns, engines roaring as they fought to resist the pull. They wasted power, they burned fuel like firewood, all to stay afloat. The human ship had no such strength. If it tried to fight the pull with brute force, it would be ripped apart within minutes. Inside the fragile hull, the crew gathered around their captain. They knew this was the end if they acted like the others. The captain studied the black hole on the screen, his eyes sharp, his voice steady. He told them not to resist, but to understand. They were not strong enough to overpower the void, but perhaps they were clever enough to bend with it. The navigator and the engineer worked side by side, rewriting the ship's old systems into something new. They mapped the currents of warped space, the bending lines of gravity that twisted around the black hole. Instead of fighting, they planned to use those lines as pathways. The ship would not flee the pull. It would ride it. The idea was insane to any alien commander, but to the humans, it was survival. When the ship tilted toward the pull, alien fleets gasped. To them, it looked like the humans had lost control, like they were plunging into certain death. But the vessel held steady, its engines firing in bursts, not to fight the pull, but to guide its fall. Like a stone skipping across water, it moved along the edges of warped gravity, slipping between invisible rivers of force. Time itself stretched, alarms screamed, but the humans adjusted again and again, guiding their ship through a place no other race dared to enter. The alien commanders shouted in disbelief. Their fleets used brute power, shields and engines, straining until they cracked, while the humans danced across gravity itself. The weakest ship had turned its flaw into a weapon. Its lack of power made it nimble, its weakness gave it freedom. Strong ships were bound to strength, but the fragile vessel was bound only to human will. Inside the ship, the crew worked until their bodies shook. Sweat dripped, hands trembled, but their eyes never left the screens. Every wrong calculation meant death. Every mistake meant destruction. Yet they moved with unity, like a single mind guiding a single body. Their captain gave no long speeches. He gave short commands, precise and calm, and they obeyed without hesitation. It was not luck keeping them alive, It was the stubborn refusal to let go. Hours bled into hours. Alien fleets watched in silence as the humans rode the edge of the black hole, their fragile ship vanishing into light and shadow, then emerging again, scarred but alive. One alien vessel cracked under strain and fell too close, vanishing into darkness forever. Another burned its engines until they exploded, forcing it to retreat. But the humans pressed on, rewriting navigation, rewriting shields, rewriting every limit their weak ship had. At last, they burst free of the black hole's edge, spinning into calmer space. The crew collapsed back in their seats, gasping, exhausted, but alive. Their vessel was broken, its hull split in places, its lights flickering weakly. But they had survived what stronger ships could not. For a moment, no one spoke. Not the humans, not the aliens, not even the council watching from their grand chamber. The silence was heavy. The silence was fear. The humans had done something greater than survival. They had shown a truth no alien wanted to admit. Power was not the only path through the void. Sometimes, weakness held the key to survival. Sometimes, weakness became strength. The crew did not know it yet, but in that moment, whispers of fear spread across the fleets. If the weakest ship could endure the impossible, what else might these humans achieve? Inside the vessel, repairs began at once. Engineers worked with bare hands, patching holes with pieces of broken panels, rerouting power through circuits not meant for such strain. They did not complain. They did not curse their fate. They laughed through exhaustion, joked through shaking voices, because to them survival was not just duty, it was proof. Every spark of light from their battered ship was proof they could rewrite fate. The captain stood at the center, his voice calm, his presence unshaken. He told them this was only the beginning. They had passed storms, stones, and void, but greater dangers still waited. He told them to be ready, for the universe would not stop testing them now. The crew nodded, their eyes glowing with something. The aliens did not understand. It was not arrogance. It was not blind hope. It was belief. Belief that no matter how weak their ship was, as long as they were human, they would endure. The fleets around them carried on, stronger ships limping from damage, weaker ones destroyed. But every commander's eyes returned again and again to the human vessel. They had stopped laughing. They had stopped mocking. Now they watched with unease, because deep inside, they all knew a single truth. The weakest ship was no longer weak. It was becoming something else, something even the council had not predicted. As the fleet prepared for the next trial, the humans pressed on, their fragile ship glowing faint in the dark. Each beat of its engines was a defiance of reality itself, each breath of its crew a reminder of something greater than power. They were not rewriting just codes or systems anymore. They were rewriting the meaning of strength. And though the trials were far from over, the galaxy had already changed. The human ship drifted into the heart of the trial zone where silence swallowed everything. The collapsing star burned behind them like a wounded beast, and the remnants of shattered fleets floated across the void like bones left in a battlefield. The alien vessels that remained were fewer now, scarred and weakened, yet their commanders still carried pride. To them, strength meant survival, and their strength had been tested. But when they looked toward the human ship, small and broken yet still alive, they felt something colder than pride. They felt unease. The council spoke at last, their voices echoing across the fleets. The final trial was before them. A void anomaly waited ahead, an invisible tear in space itself, a wound where reality bent and broke. No vessel had ever crossed its heart. Some ships had tried in ages past, but none had returned. The council declared that this would be the final measure. Any who survived would be honored. Any who failed would be forgotten. No one expected the humans to endure. Even after all they had done, most believed this would finally crush them. Inside the fragile vessel, The crew listened in silence as the orders came through. The captain stood before them, his face illuminated by the faint glow of dying lights. He told them this was not just another storm or stone or gravity well. This was the edge of everything. The void anomaly did not obey rules. It shredded systems, erased time, bent matter into shapes beyond reason. The human crew understood the risk, yet none stepped back. Their captain asked only one question. Were they ready to step into the unknown? Their voices rose together, steady, unafraid. Yes. The ship approached the anomaly, and the stars around it began to twist. Light bent in strange spirals, shapes breaking into mirrors, reflections spinning without end. Space itself cracked like glass, showing fragments of places that should not exist. The alien fleets held back, their shields glowing, engines burning, with every reserve they had. They forced their way forward with raw strength, holding formation tight. But one by one they began to falter. Systems failed, ships buckled, commanders screamed as vessels were torn apart by forces that had no name. Strong ships shattered like glass toys. The human vessel moved differently. It did not resist with brute power. Its engines flickered, its shields failed in places, but its crew adapted. They shut down systems one by one, rewiring circuits to match the distortions outside. They let the void bend them, not to destroy, but to guide. Each fragment of broken reality was not seen as a threat, but as a path. The navigator mapped impossible lines, drawing courses through places that bent sideways and inside out. The engineer rewrote the shields to sing in harmony with the distortions, bending instead of breaking. The captain gave orders sharp as knives, each one cutting through panic with precision. To alien eyes, it was madness. The humans were flying into death with a broken ship, and yet somehow the void did not swallow them. It twisted around them, reshaping, bending, but the vessel slipped through again and again. Where other ships collapsed under the pressure, the weakest ship wove itself into the current, becoming part of the storm. The council watched in silence, their faces unreadable, their pride shaken. Inside the ship, the crew fought exhaustion deeper than ever before. The walls shook, the air grew thin, every system screamed at once, but still they worked, eyes burning, hands bleeding, hearts refusing to surrender. Their bodies were weak, but their will was iron. They had already survived storms, stone, and void. This was just another test, and humans had never stopped at limits. The anomaly grew brighter as they reached its heart. Reality broke around them, showing endless reflections of the crew, endless versions of their ships scattered across fractured space. Some showed them destroyed, some showed them victorious, some showed them standing in silence in worlds they did not know. For a moment, the crew saw not just what was, but what could be. Fear pressed against their minds, trying to break them apart. But the captain spoke once more, his voice steady in the chaos. He reminded them of who they were, not aliens, not ancient empires, not machines bound to perfection. They were human, they were flawed, fragile, and stubborn, and that was their strength. With those words, the crew pulled together, guiding the ship into the very core of the anomaly. Systems collapsed one after another, lights burned out, alarms fell silent. For a heartbeat, it seemed the vessel was gone, consumed by the impossible. The alien fleets turned their eyes away, convinced it was over. The weakest ship had finally broken. But then, from the center of the shattered void, light bloomed. The human vessel emerged, glowing brighter than before, its engines burning with energy that no alien science had ever seen. Its hull shimmered, reshaped by the anomaly itself, no longer fragile but transformed. The weakest ship had crossed the final limit, and in doing so, it had rewritten its own reality. Across the fleets, silence was absolute. No one spoke, no one laughed, no one mocked. The council themselves sat frozen, their pride hollow, their predictions shattered. They had given humanity the weakest ship to watch them fail. Instead, they had watched the birth of something greater than failure or victory. They had watched a fragile species break every limit placed before them. Inside the ship, the crew looked around in stunned silence. Their vessel was alive in ways they could not explain, its systems pulsing with strange new energy, its hull carrying scars of battles that had already become legend. They had faced the final trial, and they had not only survived, they had changed. The captain stood at the center, his eyes steady, his voice quiet. He told them that they were no longer passengers of weakness. They had become the proof of something greater. Humanity had turned weakness into strength, and now into power. The anomaly closed behind them, leaving the void empty once more. The fleets stared at the glowing vessel, unsure whether to fear or to bow. The humans did not ask for either. They simply pressed forward, their ships steady, their hearts ready for whatever came next. For they knew now what the galaxy had refused: to believe. Limits were not walls, limits were doors, and humanity had just learned how to walk through them. The human ship floated beyond the anomaly, transformed yet scarred, alive with an energy that no one could name. Its hull pulsed faintly as though it breathed, its engines hummed with resonance, like a living heart. To the alien fleets, it was no longer the weakest vessel, but something that did not fit any category of strength or weakness. It was something new, something born from the impossible. Across command decks, alien commanders stared in silence, their pride crumbling under the weight of what they had witnessed. The council themselves could not speak. Their careful plan to humiliate humanity had shattered, and now they faced a truth they had never prepared for. Inside the vessel, the crew sat in stunned quiet. Their bodies were exhausted, their faces pale, but their eyes burned with the light of survival. They touched consoles that no longer responded like old machines. Instead, the systems answered as though they had been rewritten at their core. Shields bent with fluid grace. Engines responded before commands finished, and sensors reached farther than they ever had. The ship was no longer what the aliens had given them. It had become what the humans had forged through trial, pain, and stubborn defiance. The captain stood in the center of the bridge, silent for a long moment as he looked at his crew. Each of them had carried the vessel through storms and voids with nothing but their bare will. Each of them had turned weakness into survival and survival into power. He spoke finally, his voice low but sharp. He told them they had not simply passed a test. They had changed the test itself. What was meant to break them had remade them. What was meant to prove weakness had revealed strength. Humanity had not been measured. Humanity had rewritten the scale. Across the fleet channels, alien voices finally stirred. Some cried that it was unnatural, that no species should wield what the humans now carried. Others whispered that it was inevitable, that perhaps the council had underestimated them from the beginning. The council themselves remained quiet, but their silence carried fear. For the first time, they had seen a species take what was given and reshape it into something the galaxy had never known. The humans had not cheated, had not fled. They had faced every storm, every stone, every void, and now the impossible itself. They had faced it with the weakest ship and emerged with something greater than any empire's proudest vessel.